Planning Commission meeting Wednesday, May the 24th to order. May I please have a roll call?
Chairwoman Amanda Jackson Denmark.
Here.
Vice Chairman Charlie Whitmore.
Here.
Commissioner Kathleen Duncan.
Here.
Commissioner Rich Delcor.
Here.
Commissioner Jim Flynn.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lydia DePaul.
Here.
Commissioner Jason Stewart.
Notice regarding adjournment. The Planning Commission will not hear new items after 9:30 unless authorized by a majority vote of the commission members present. Items which have not been heard before 9:30 may be continued onto the next regular meeting or a special meeting as determined by the commission members. Notice regarding public comments. Every member of the public who is recognized to speak shall address the chairman and in speaking avoid disrespect to commission staff or other members of the meeting. State your name and address when speaking for the record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. May I have an adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. The civility pledge. We pledge to build a stronger and more prosperous community by advocating for civil engagement, respecting others and their viewpoints, and finding solutions for the betterment of the town of Bluffton. May I have an adoption of the minutes for April the 26th, or a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Public comments. Do we have any public comments that are for items not on the agenda?
No, they are for the agenda.
Okay, and we have no old business, so we will get straight to the new business. Is the public comment for? Okay. First, we'll hear from Dan, and then the applicant, and then we'll do the public comment. Okay. Dan, this is for Buckwalter Crossroads Master Plan Amendment. A request by Brian Whitmer of Whitmer Jones Kiefer on behalf of Millstone Ventures. Approval of a property owner, Parcel 8A LLC, for approval of a Master Plan Amendment application.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. Master Plan Amendment for Buckwalter Crossroads. This is a location map showing the, this is Bluffton Parkway. This is Highway 170 or Okatee Highway. This is the existing crossroads. What's in the crossroads master plan right now, it's highlighted in green. North of Bluffton Parkway, south of Bluffton Parkway with frontage on Okatee. The current request that we're talking about tonight is this section here that takes it all the way down to Gibbet Road. This is the proposing to put this into the existing Buckwalter Crossroads master plan. This is another shot of it as an aerial. The applicant, Brian Whitmer of Whitmer Jones Kiefer, on behalf of Millstone Ventures LLC and with the approval of the property owner, Parcel 8A LLC, is requesting approval for an amendment to the currently approved master plan for Buckwalter Crossroads in the Buckwalter PUD. And more specifically, the amendment is a request to add an additional 21.92 acres that will include 16.02 acres of residential development and 5.9 acres of commercial development. This is the existing master plan, and what's being asked tonight is to amend it. So this would be the proposed master plan, and the amendment includes this bottom portion down here. They provided a conceptual site plan with this application. It's important to note that any development on that would be included on what's on this conceptual site plan would go through the development plan approval process. It'd be coming back to you for a preliminary development plan. And then it's also within the highway corridor, so you would see it twice. That's a close-up in case we need to discuss anything in further detail, but I remind you that this is a site plan that's not up tonight. Tonight's just requesting the master plan amendment. The subject property is within the Buckwalter Commons land use tract of the Buckwalter PUD, and within that tract it has allowed land uses that include neighborhood and commercial and general commercial uses and single-family and multifamily residential uses. And the neighborhood and general commercial uses is essentially all commercial uses. All proposed development is subject to full review and approval at time of development plan submittal. That's what I was referring to earlier. The subject property is within the Highway Corridor Overlay District, and it will require a certificate of appropriateness, reviewing landscaping, lighting, and architecture at time of development plan submittal. So you'll see that as well at time of development plan submittal. And the subject property shall conform to the requirements and recommendations of the Beaufort County Connects 2021 Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan at time of development plan submittal. And that's because that was brought to town council and town adopted that plan as part of the as a supplement to the comprehensive plan. These are your review criteria. We had a pre-application meeting on December 1 of 2022, and they made their submittal on January 24th, 2023. It was reviewed by DRC on March 1st of 2023. We are here tonight to make a recommendation to town council, and then town council consideration for the master plan amendment. The date for that will be determined, is yet to be determined. Tonight, your actions for consideration are recommend approval of the application as submitted by the applicant, recommend approval of the application with conditions, or recommend denial of the application as submitted by the applicant. Town staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Town staff finds that the requirements of section 393 of the UDO can be met with the following conditions and recommends that the Planning Commission provide a recommendation of conditional approval to Town Council for Buckwalter Crossroads Master Plan Amendment. And we have 3 recommended conditions. First one is a statement shall be placed on the amended master plan declaring that all development within the Buckwalter Crossroads Master Plan shall conform to the requirements and recommendations of the Beaufort County Connects 2021 Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. And essentially that plan provides for it has a recommendation on the northbound side of SC Highway 170 that a multi-use path be installed. Condition number 2 is whether located on or off site, it shall be the responsibility of developers to install a 10-foot wide concrete bicycle and pedestrian path along SC Highway 170 frontage consistent with the requirements and recommendations of the Beaufort County Connects 2021 Bicycle and Pedestrian Path in conjunction with an individual site development within the Buckwalter Crossroads Master Plan. And the third and final recommendation from staff is that site layouts for all parcels are subject to full town review and approval at time of development plan submittal. And I will just open it up if you have any questions for me. I know that the applicants are here, so if you have any questions for them.
Does anyone have any questions for Dan at this time?
I just have one quick one. Go back to the recommendations, if you would, Dan.
Yes.
Number 2 states concrete bicycle and pedestrian path. Most of them are asphalt.
They are, and on the other side of 170 is asphalt. We had actually met with Beaufort County Transportation Engineering Department. One of the questions was who would be responsible for long-term maintenance, and what they had, their engineering director recommended that it be that they would, if DOT does not assume long-term maintenance, that Beaufort County would, and Beaufort County would like to see it as a concrete path rather than an asphalt path because they view that as easier long-term maintenance.
And this is nitpicking here, but I think in this particular case with the asphalt already all around the area, I think concrete's going to look a little weird.
Yep.
That's why I asked the question, the commissioners.
But is that something that we can change that?
Certainly can.
We can say concrete or asphalt, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, does the applicant want to speak? Please state your name.
Hello. I'm Brian Whitmer with Whitmer Jones Kiefer. We're land planning. Whole team is here, as you can see. We have the client, we have legal, and then we have civil engineering. I think we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I think Dan did a great job of introducing the project.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and let the public comment come up.
Thanks.
Yep.
Gary,
Carol Crutchfield.
please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, welcome. My name is Carol Crutchfield. I'm the Director of Facilities Planning and Construction with the Beaufort County School District. If you want my address, I'll give it to you. I live at 4 King George Road in Bluffton, South Carolina, about a mile down the road from where this project is. But I stand before you tonight as a representative of the administrative staff to discuss the development of new residential housing project that's on your agenda tonight. In the town of Bluffton, our educational system faces a pressing challenge. Out of 11 schools in this area, a staggering 6 are currently operating beyond their intended capacity. To alleviate the strain, we installed an additional 8 classroom modular structure at Pritchardville Elementary this past summer. This particular project right now falls in the Pritchardville Elementary School zone. The school now has a total of 18 classrooms in mobile units. The remaining schools continue to approach or exceed their programmatic capacity. Recognizing the urgent need for a solution, the board recently approved funding for the design of a new elementary school at the May River campus. This initiative aims to alleviate the overcrowding at Pritchardville. However, there is no funding at present to build the school. So currently our approach to tackle the issue of overcrowding involves the installation of mobile classrooms and the reassignment of students from newly developed neighborhoods like this would be to less congested schools, even if it means traveling past a nearby school. And while this strategy helps to some extent, it's important to note that as all our schools continue to reach their capacity limits, the available options for families will gradually become less appealing than they are at present. And I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Just for everyone's clarity tonight, this application is just for the master plan amendment, not the uses specifically. So those will be addressed, just to have a clarification for the public. Those will be addressed when there are further development plans. So.
You're back.
And you can always come back. Okay. So do you want to start off with any questions, comments from?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but my name is Walter Nestor, and I'm the attorney. I'm an attorney with Burr & Forman, and we represent the applicant. And I have a couple of comments and questions before you start your deliberations, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
All right. I'm sorry that I didn't stand up earlier. But it's the staff comments, the staff recommendations that we have some concern about. As Mr. Frazier pointed out when he introduced the application, one of the first things he said is that we have the permission, that Millstone Development has the permission of the landowner, Parcel 8, LLC, to submit an application for master plan amendment, adding this property to the Buckwalter Crossroads PUD. What we don't have is the permission of anybody else in that Buckwalter Crossroads PUD. And so we are concerned that the addition of this statement, I'm concerned that it's going to create liability for our client. We don't know how our application can be used to bind somebody else's property. Just like Mr. Frazier said, we had to get permission from Parcel 8A LLC to submit this application.
Well, can I ask a question then? Would it not be more beneficial then to just create your own master plan instead of annexing, or not annexing, but amending the existing master plan?
Well, it may very well be, but we didn't, and that was a discussion that we had with staff early on, is to submit our own master plan. I don't know about the discussions with the landowner and how that would go. Of course, we have invested significant amount of time and effort in this process, but we believe, and I'd also like to point out that the staff has advised Millstone that they are going to have to construct this path, and Millstone is willing to do that, absolutely glad to do that, either put money into a fund for the path to be constructed at a later time, because rather than have a sidewalk to nowhere, but we're absolutely willing to do that. As a matter of fact, every staff request we have said yes to. And so this one just threw us, because this one we see that this is something that we can't do and we can't change. So Perhaps there's a way to change that language to make that statement something else, but as it reads to us, it causes us great concern that those other landowners are going to be upset with us because we submitted an application and the application is going to result in an amendment to their master plan.
That's what the hard part is when, the risk when you open up a master plan, then you're free for all, I mean, we're allowed to change things within it, so.
It's kind of a late-breaking risk. It's kind of a late-breaking risk.
It's breaking to us tonight. So
Yeah.
it's current to us.
And quite frankly,
Maybe late to you, but it's current to us.
there might be other things, if we're opening this master plan, that we'll want to discuss in addition to these bike paths.
Well, there again, that's what we don't understand, how the planning commission or the town can lawfully do that. Again, we have standing before you to deal with one piece of property. We don't have standing to deal with the rest of the property, and that's our concern.
Richardson, do you have some legal guidance as far as when you open up the master plan?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. Again, for the record, as we do most meetings, Richardson Bruce, Fairmont, Brooks, and LaBruce in here for the Planning Commission to provide guidance to the Planning Commission for any legal issues that y'all may have. So the way that this has been treated in the past with master plan amendments is largely akin to a text amendment, where an applicant who may need a text amendment for a single property requests a UDO text amendment, but that text amendment would impact anything that is impacted by the UDO, any sort of development, it would have that sort of cascading effect. Not every single property owner needs to have signed off on that text amendment, otherwise you could effectively administratively or effectively prevent yourself from being able to amend the UDO or amend your zoning ordinances. Because this is not by right, the ability to amend a master plan to incorporate new land. This isn't a development that is by right permitted. It is opening itself up to the conditions imposed by staff and by the Planning Commission and ultimately Town Council. We do think that it is appropriate to consider these issues, but we also understand, or I understand the extraordinarily difficult position that Millstone and the applicant are in at this point, because it is something where I don't think it was considered by them when this process began, or they probably would have gone the other route and done their own master plan. So I certainly sympathize with the applicant. But ultimately, it is within staff's discretion to make this recommendation to Planning Commission. It's within Planning Commission's discretion to consider it, and ultimately, it's within Council's consideration to impose such a condition. The alternative for the applicant is to withdraw the application, and then the master plan as it exists will stay in place. So I hope that addresses your questions and answers it appropriately.
I didn't wait a second.
Well, if everybody waits, then we're not going to get anywhere. So, Lydia?
Well, I know he's getting out, so
I'm going to let them get up and speak. How's that?
Well, the only other thing that came up, and Ann, could you put up that drawing that shows the pink line, please? Because one of the things that we've talked about in planning is the opportunity and the ability to create, either frontage roads, connector roads, whatever you want to call them, to mitigate the traffic on the major road, which is 170. We don't see a possibility of that in the master plan amendment that's coming forward, which would be something that if we are opening up a master plan, we certainly want the applicant to consider doing something like continuing that pink line right through all the way to Gibbet.
But I think in their conceptual, it does that anyway. It just didn't get colored pink.
I don't think it did that. I thought it was a crooked kind of road.
You want more of a straight, like a straight.
It's a driveway.
Through a multifamily.
Yeah, versus what the pink line was indicating, which was
actual road.
an actual frontage kind of crossroad.
You want to talk to the interview? Sure.
It is, we do have a frontage road with angled parking, and part of what we work through with town staff is that would be, because the parking's angled, it's not a street section and just going through a parking lot. So interconnectivity is something we wanted, and we want people to be able to come through this. It's not a gated multifamily development. And I would say if we weren't amending the master plan, that connection doesn't happen, or doesn't have to if it's a standalone. And that was part of one of the things that we thought was good. We get that interconnectivity. You have access down to Gibbet if needed, and that's really how you want them to live anyway. You want the commercial to come into the residential and to be able to get to those uses without having to use ones.
I guess my concern is this is all residential, and it's got lots of angled parking, as you say. I could very easily see the residents wanting speed bumps to prevent traffic from going through there, because I can see it going through there. Then you got to make a left by that circle to continue out. Is that correct?
To continue, well, you have
Gibbet Road.
Gibbet, right in, right out. Full access is on Gibbet, and that's per the DOT. There is 3 commercial parcels on the right-hand side, and then there's a 4th commercial parcel on the corner. So it does have other uses besides just residential.
Well, and if you develop the multifamily prior to the development of the commercial parcels, they need to be able to connect to the future development to the north, which they won't be in control of because they won't own those parcels either. So I'm with Delcor, Commissioner Delcor. There needs to be, I understand that you have provided some ability to circuitously serpentine through these multitude of properties that will be developed at various times to get to Gibbet. I think it's not in keeping with the rest of the master plan as shown, where it's a much more direct path, even if it does serpentine a little bit. But I think what I'm at bare minimum wanting to see on here is a pink line that actually extends all the way through this property to Gibbet Road, to where you can turn left and right, not just right in, right out. Because we may not always be here to say, hey, we know this was intended to connect. And somebody might develop this later where it is gated, where you go out one side, you go out to the other, where it blocks off for some reason, because we're not guaranteed this plan as it stands. So I want some record that states that full connection goes through.
Let me interject real quick, just so that I can clear something.
It can go over the.
Let me just clear some things up.
Yes.
What we are doing tonight is not that.
Right.
So we have to think about it, understandably, the connectivity, but they may not come in with this plan.
I understand that.
So we can't base our ruling just on there's not a pink line, because we're talking about amending a master plan. So yes, we want all of that to happen, but we need to be on top of it going forward. That's what I'm saying for tonight's purposes.
Right, and I'm not speaking to what's specifically drawn as they have it in their plan. What I'm saying is that from a conceptual level, for the whole entirety of this master plan, there is a frontage road that connects, shown by a pink line, that should continue through this property. However that's executed in the end, that's subject to change as this goes through.
And they're not saying not to do it, and maybe their configuration's not good, and that's where we help them later.
Right, but what I'm saying is
We want them to draw a pink line on the plan.
want the pink line on there.
Could you draw a pink line on the plan?
I think we could draw a pink line.
Okay.
Could you draw a
Lydia.
yellow line?
Lydia, what was your question?
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah. Any more, or down here, Jim?
Nope, not right now.
Probably go for it.
Okay. I have a question for Dan. I can wait.
You want to speak? I'm sorry.
May you state your name and who you are, please?
My name's Adrian Dana Miller, and I'm one of the owners of Millstone Ventures, so I'm the applicant. I just wanted to pose a question about condition number 1 to the commission, and Dan obviously is here as well.
Can we pull that up on the screen? Sorry. I didn't get a printed packet.
And I'd like to start off by saying that we're actually proponents of the connectivity and of the multi-use path. It's a great complement to our use, and we like it. We do other developments, all over the country, and this type of connectivity is something that we commonly embrace for our development. So we do want to do it, and we're happy to construct it at the time of, we'll be doing the multifamily piece of the development. So yeah, and we went through the DRC process and discussed things like where we're able to access a state road, and we got our traffic study done where we're pretty bound by SCDOT's review of the traffic study of where all of our entrances are and everything. And we've received many good and helpful comments during the DRC process. I think I can say all of which we incorporated into the plan to the best of our ability. So we're trying to be really good to work with and, be sympathetic to input from all the interested parties. And so on comment number 1, obviously we want that, and we want that pathway to connect all the way to Bluffton Parkway, just like it shows in the 2021 Connects plan. That would be optimal for us. And, I think the questions that Walter brought up regarding that comment, it kind of stems from, I kind of have a, sorry, I'm just trying to find the right words. It would, at the time of development approval for all the future development, where that pathway goes and extends to Bluffton Parkway, is that something that the planning staff and commission could address with those developers as those come up, just as it has been addressed with us for our multifamily development? Because the thing that makes us nervous about it is making commitments on other people's land, unbeknownst to them. That just seems like a liability to us. We've been advised by Walter that could be a liability to us, that we're essentially making commitments on other people's land unbeknownst to them, and that is something we prefer to avoid. So
That goes back to my question, the first question of why not have an independent master plan?
yeah, and we could do
What's
that.
the advantage of amending it versus having it?
We had conversations early on with planning staff versus I think we did, and correct me if I'm wrong.
And
Yeah.
that posed an option to, Brian.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we've talked with Willie, with Ward Edwards, and Brian about the trade-offs and the pros and cons of new master plan versus master plan amendment, and this just wasn't brought to our attention at this point in time as something that should be considered. And this comment we didn't receive until last week, so that's why we're not. That's why we're in the position we're in now. Yeah. So we would love it, and we would be very supportive of it if, when the future developments, are brought before you, that this be addressed, because we want that connectivity. But it would make us much more comfortable, and we would appreciate if we're worried that somebody will say, we'll point back to our, master plan amendment, and there will be a liability, as we've been advised we have by Walter, that, we made a commitment on their property unbeknownst to them. So that's if you would consider it that way, we would really appreciate it. And if you can't, then that's something we'll have to discuss, of course.
Question? Denmark, sorry. Are we creating an amendment just for this millstone, or are we amending the entire master plan?
The entire master plan.
So
So if we make a requirement, it goes to the entire master plan.
right, which is by the kind of thing that we have the ability to do if somebody wants to amend a master plan. So we haven't done anything out of context, correct?
If there's in the original master plan, a connectivity plan with the pink line, they still have to adhere to something, and this is just the something they have to adhere to?
No, that goes back on the whole master plan.
That's what I'm saying, on the master plan. Like they'd have to do something anyway.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, you're making it sound like you would be responsible, while we and the staff are saying the entire master plan has to have item 1. But you're making it sound like it would fall back on you.
It doesn't have it now. It would have
Right,
it
I know-
after this,
I
under this.
understand that.
And that's why they feel they might be liable to the person who's given them the permission to come into their master plan.
Even though we're making that change with number 1.
Go ahead, Rick.
Therefore, if I may, frankly, for a planning commission to be considering the potential liabilities between the current owners in this master plan and the potential developers, I think is a little outside of your purview. What y'all should be doing is analyzing the criteria that's before you. Staff has made this recommendation based off of I believe it's either a resolution or ordinance adopted by Beaufort County, and that has been incorporated within the town planning procedures by town council. This connects 2021 bicycle and pedestrian plan. Obviously, the 2021 bicycle and pedestrian plan of Beaufort County was not in place at the time of the original adoption of this master plan. So by seeking to amend this, Commissioner Delcor, I think you are correct in saying this. We can't effectively spot zone portions of a master plan by saying, okay, well, this is going to be imposed on this one particular property. Everybody else is going to be essentially locked into what they had previously approved. When you open the master plan, again, this is a planning document, it's a zoning document. You have within your powers the ability to modify that plan consistent with the law. And the process that we go through, we believe, is appropriate. It will act in, again, similar to a text amendment, slightly different, but that is my opinion on this, and I believe it has been the position of the town in the past as well when looking at master plan amendments. I think that the last time Planning Commission probably considered one similar would have been somewhere in the New Riverside area. I'm trying to remember, maybe it was Midpoint, where there was the discussion of you can either move forward with the amendment or you can keep your master plan the way it is. You can withdraw your application, but if you're going to amend, we have the right to look at requesting a reduction in density or how the entrance to the development is done. And so, again, I'm sincerely sympathetic for the developers in this case, because they've obviously put in time, money, and effort into this, and unfortunately this did come up to them at a late date, but ultimately it is part of the planning directives provided by town council, Beaufort County, and it appears to have been adopted within these conditions by staff because of that, and it is within your discretion as Planning Commission to incorporate it as a recommendation to town council or to eliminate it based off of what the applicant has requested. So it's up to y'all.
Yeah, I do. And Dan, I'm sorry to hit you with this. I should have asked you this before, but it didn't occur to me. Question, do we know why this property was not originally in the master plan? Do we have any idea?
That I don't know. I don't know if anyone here does.
Okay.
Willie, do you
Because the same owner of the rest of the master plan owns it. I was curious why he kept it.
You do know? Okay, if somebody knows.
Yeah. Adrian again. So it was, and this is a little bit hearsay, I haven't seen all the documents myself, but my understanding is that it was previously owned by a church of some kind.
Okay.
And Tom Zinn bought it in about 2017.
Okay, so he bought it after.
Parcel 8A LLC bought it, and so they bought it after the original master plan was completed.
Okay, thank you. That helps. The question I keep asking myself, and I've been asking myself for the past 3 days since reviewing this packet, what, and Dan, I don't know if you have insight in this. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm fine.
What,
I can answer it.
what is the benefit to the town? We, as a planning commission, are supposed to consider what is the benefit to the town? What is the benefit to the town, if any, of wrapping this into the adjacent master plan? And, go ahead.
Well, one of them is the connectivity that we were talking about. I mean, the access to SC 170 is already set in stone, but DOT wants right in, right out's where they want them, and that's tied
If
to
they
an
have-
access management plan.
If they have their own master
But,
plan,
no, if
that's
you're
not
saying
different.
is amending into the existing master plan versus their own, I mean, they could
I just can't
literally
think
do
of
the
a
exact
benefit.
same thing as its own master plan. I think it made it easier for them to request amending into this. From a staff position, we could process it in either way.
Okay, and that's the struggle I'm having personally is I don't see a benefit. I don't see a drawback necessarily,
Right.
other than what I'm
Yeah.
about to say. I don't see a benefit to the town of amending this into a master plan. I do see benefits to the town if, and don't throw things at me, especially you, Walter, of it being its own master plan, because we can focus more on that than when it's wrapped into something. We can deal with the sidewalks and not impact other people. We can deal with, I mean, there are traffic issues, and I know there's been a traffic plan done, but there are traffic issues that if the uses that are drawn on this map, which we're not considering those uses tonight,
Right.
come to fruition, there's a lot more discussion that's going to happen that I'm having I hate to say it, but I'm having a challenge with amending the other master plan. And then in the side of my thought process, the property owner that owns that master plan isn't even here tonight. So
Right.
we're having this conversation about something that may affect him and
Well, I will say,
will impact him.
recommendations 1 and 2, the recommendation to have a path built came into play when the town adopted the Connects plan.
Right.
And then the real question is who bears the responsibility of building it? And what our recommendation from staff is that the developer builds it as it comes in. And that came out of a discussion that we had with the county, where we also threw in, okay, if we burden the developer with building the path, do we burden them with the long-term maintenance of it? And they said, no, we would maintain it long-term. And I think they would maintain it long-term even if you amended the condition to not say concrete. I mean, but that's where we stand with it. The reason that's in there is if town council had rejected the Connects plan and said we don't want to adopt it as a municipality, we wouldn't have those first two in this as a recommendation from staff.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I just, for what it's worth, I personally am having a challenge with recommending that this moves forward in this way, shape, and form. And I'm one of 6. I'm just trying to work through it.
Richardson, you have something?
Madam Chair, if I may, I want to thank Mr. Nestor for making sure that I relayed this to the commission, because it may not have been clear so far that there are multiple owners, not just we've discussed the master plan as if it's a single owner, it's all of the property within there, but there are multiple folks, some of whom are acutely aware of what is going on here tonight and others who may not be. So despite the notices out to the public. So I just wanted to make sure that was brought before you.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
I have a couple of comments. Ignorance of standing policies is not an excuse. Ignorance and not paying attention to public notice of what's going on your properties is not an excuse either. That being said, and I am a huge advocate for sidewalks, and I think with the rate of growth and development happening around here, I think the developers should bear a portion of the burden of a lot of these capital improvements. That being said, I'm also sensitive to the requirements that are imposed upon a developer in the process and going into that process knowing what to expect. So one of the questions that I'm looking at is in the Connects plan, it's an internal policy, it sounds like. It was an internal discussion between the staff and Beaufort County imposing that burden on the developer. How would a developer know that that would be imposed upon them by reading the Connects plan? Is there a statement in there that says?
No, there isn't. It's called out as an intermediate project to be built within 6 to 10 years. In fact, the back of the plan lists funding sources that could be used to get all of the recommendations. And this is county-wide projects that they're showing. And it lists funding sources in the back. It breaks down individual paths and segments of paths by short-term, medium-term, and long-term, 0 to 5, 6 to 10, and then 10 and beyond, I think. And we see it as an opportunity. I mean, this is very similar to someone coming in wanting to do a commercial development on an undeveloped property, and they've got a sidewalk hitting them on both sides of their property lines. We would say you're building a sidewalk with your commercial development, tying it into the existing sidewalks. I don't see that. I'm surprised that this is such a big bone of contention, actually. But I guess the argument is they're not arguing. Well, Millstone is not arguing putting in the path at all. They said they would do it, but the concern is that you're burdening the existing master plan future developers with having to put in a path if this is approved. Staff is perfectly comfortable with that recommendation. But that doesn't mean that you guys need to carry that recommendation forward to town council.
Can I get a clarification, Dan? So if we, for whatever reason, decide not to, we could say we could delete this from the recommendation? Is that, you're saying we could do that?
Certainly. You can
Okay, if we did
you
that.
can reword staff's
Okay, but if we did that,
recommendations.
is there any easement to say in the future there has to be room for a sidewalk, or is it just, this is, if we don't put it in, it's gone?
Well, it'd be a little bit more of another discussion. I mean, there's a possibility that an easement may be required on properties in order to get the path built, or it could possibly be built completely within the DOT right-of-way at a future date, funded publicly. So I don't know. Another option would be to provide a 15-foot, 20-foot easement for a future sidewalk to be built by others, future path to be built by others.
Again, if I may, so you've got a couple of different issues that have been raised. There was discussion of an easement, and that's perhaps a little bit, again, sticking to the criteria. And Dan, if you go back to the criteria, right. I think the very first one that y'all want to do is look at the comprehensive plan. Does this master plan amendment conform with the comprehensive plan? And the comprehensive plan, which y'all just adopted within the last 12 months, town council adopted, but y'all spearheaded that project. In the comprehensive plan, the Beaufort County Connects 2021 program is referenced as one of the key components of the transportation element and incurred. So I think that is where you're getting the introduction to the Beaufort County Connects plan, making sure that this application is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. And because of that, staff has made that recommendation to Planning Commission as a condition. Ultimately, Planning Commission's recommendation to town council can include the conditions referenced by staff. It can include no conditions. It can be a recommendation of denial. It is within y'all's purview, it is within y'all's jurisdiction to make the decisions that you deem appropriate, provided that you are following your criteria.
No matter what we recommend, denial or these different caveats, it's still going to go to town council.
Absolutely. Because master plan amendment has to be adopted by council.
I'm of the opinion that it's our responsibility to include this in a master plan, whether it's a new plan or an amended plan. And so to me, if the applicant wants to withdraw their application because they don't want this to be part of the amended master plan, then that's their decision. But if we're going to approve an amended master plan, I think that we need to include this because it's explicitly part of the comprehensive plan, which is our major review criteria. So it's their decision if they want to keep the application or pull it. But I think either way, my stance is that we need to include that language whenever it comes back up.
Yes, Mr. Nestor.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Come up to the podium.
Thank you again. Walter Nestor for the record. By way of a suggestion, if we make condition number 1 a notice requirement rather than a requirement, so the town is telling everyone else who looks at this master plan that they're going to be required. So that it's a modest change of the words. I just provided that change to Mr. Richardson, Mr. LaBruce, I'm sorry. But just change a couple of words. It's not Millstone that's doing this, to make it clear that this is a requirement, that the town is going to require all future development within this Buckwalter Crossings to conform to Beaufort County Connects 2021. And that provides us with just a little bit of cover that our application didn't trigger it, but what town and the Planning Commission recommended and town council perhaps will approve is a notice that's now existing in the master plan, and that notice warns future developers that they are going to be required to do something. It's a modest difference, but
Can you read that, however you worded it, so I can hear it while I'm reading it?
yes, ma'am.
It is,
Can we put it up?
No, but
No.
whoever wants to read it, someone.
go ahead, Walter.
So the change to number 1 would be a statement shall be placed, and I'll tell you when the change is. A statement shall be placed on the amended master plan declaring that, and then insert, the town shall require, then pick up again, all development within Buckwalter Crossroads master plan conform, eliminate the word shall, conform to the requirements and recommendations of the Beaufort County Connects 2021 bicycle and pedestrian plan. What we're changing is simply inserting the town shall require that all development
So
conform.
that doesn't fall back on the applicant.
It's some cover. Yes, ma'am. It's some cover.
This just keeps getting muddier and muddier.
To be fair, though, is opening the master plan not the initiating thing? I mean, the fact that we're opening the master plan is why this is coming up. So this is the triggering event.
Yes.
I have one. And one thing I want to say, and I've heard it tonight over and over and over again, is as much a surprise to you that that you saw it and then we saw it, but this is how it is going to be. Meaning, I understand where you are. I mean, there's no doubt about it that I understand it. I don't want to be in your place to have this forced upon you, but we're doing our job. You have to understand, we just went through months and months of this plan. And because of that, we I want to be responsible for saying that we have to be able to conform to that. And I understand where you're at. And it's unfortunate that you're at this predicament right now and you're learning this, but it might be to your best interest to think about withdrawing and come back as your own.
One thing I'd like to add, I'd say the statement that Walter Nestor just read would be, still requires that it's just putting it on the town, and would probably be far better than us withdrawing and resubmitting individually, and then you have no language on that adjacent property, which would be the other option. You'd see this master plan back just by itself, and it wouldn't really have, you wouldn't have any language to the Buckwalter Crossroads.
Madam Chair, perhaps before Planning Commission makes a decision on the proposed language, it may be worthwhile to ask staff whether they have any objection to the proposed language. Because ultimately that statement 1 was what staff had proposed, and if staff is fine and the applicant's fine with a minor tweak, it ultimately, again, is Planning Commission's decision, but...
Guys, I keep going back to what is the benefit to the town?
Having this language.
I don't see a benefit to the town.
Don't you think having them conform with 2021 for the rest of the master plan is a benefit to the town?
I think we can make the rest of the master plan conform to that. I don't have to use them to do it.
I feel like we're putting a modifier in there that we don't need, which is the town requires. Are we going to do that on all of these? I mean, it's a master plan. It's been opened, we amended it.
Does town staff object to it?
I don't think we do. I think the language modified by Mr. Nestor is fine. I don't see a problem with it. Do you concur? Well, actually, you see me and Ed asked me. We don't have a problem because that's exactly what is going to happen. Development plans are going to come in, and we, as the town and town staff, will let them know that installing the path will be a requirement of the development plan approval.
Else, or do we want to go ahead and motion and
revision that you're
No,
asking.
I have something to add. I too, I think, share sentiments of concern about this being included, like changing a whole master plan for this section, and not doing this as a separate master plan, and I think it really should be. One of the, in addition to this bicycle path that I see being an issue, the other thing I see is that there are portions of the old master plan that I don't think conform to the standards of the PUDs. So you've got the Sandhill Tract above the Buckwall or the Bluffton Parkway, the sliver between the wetland and the parkway, which is shown as like a retail center. That's identified as residential in the Sandhill Tract, which wouldn't allow for that kind of development. I understand that this is not your responsibility. You're not even looking at that, but you're opening up a master plan that's showing line work that isn't consistent with what needs to be there or what can be allowed to be there. We're not talking use, but the type of development in itself. And I also saw in the paperwork there was a question of doing warehousing north of Bluffton Parkway between 170 and the wetland, which, again, there was a statement from town staff saying if you're going to do that, you'd have to update the line work. I'm assuming that got dropped because you didn't want to get into the line work on that piece of property. So, again, I echo that same comment of this opens a can of worms, and it really should be its own standalone document if you're not willing to get back in there and take care of some of the things that are in that master plan that are problematic.
I agree. I mean, it makes sense. Why open up something that you don't know what's going to happen?
And to answer what you brought up, Lydia, I feel like we would have more control over a small segment if we're looking after it. And I think we can deal with the pathways on the rest of it. I understand what you're saying. I just personally, I don't see necessarily a benefit to the town other than potentially forcing the rest of the master plan to have that bike path, which I think we can do anyways as the developments are coming to us. I do see a benefit in if it has its own master plan, we're able to hold it a little bit more accountable than if it's part of another one. I could be wrong, but that's where I'm sitting.
In what way can they be held more accountable, I guess, just so I can understand that process?
I feel like the connector roads to the outside, the traffic study, we can take a little bit better look at, because I don't know if that traffic study included the whole master plan or if it just included what these proposed apartments and so on have, just because we don't have that before us. I'm very concerned about that Gibbet Road intersection and how all of this development impacts it. And I feel like if it's part of, and I could be wrong, I feel like if it's part of a bigger master plan, it kind of gets lost in some of that, and the traffic impact study isn't necessarily just on this, but it's on more. If that makes sense.
Adrian Dana Miller again. So it sounds kind of like the direction we're headed here is that we may need to postpone this and ultimately consider withdrawing and submitting this as a new master plan. Like that would be maybe a cleaner and preferable, request. If we do that, we're probably going to find ourselves here again 4 months from now, approaching you again with a similar plan with new DRC comments and adjustments made, which of course we're happy to do if that's what we'll have to do. effectively, if we do that, it kind of seems to me, and I could be wrong about this, that it will be very similar to the consideration that you have to make tonight about our plan, as in, it will be similar use and there will be some adjustments made, and maybe we need to go through that process. We'll still be agreeable to the Connects plan, but it won't open up the can of worms with the rest of the master plan. But that seems substantially similar to removing comment number 1 and then considering this in terms of where we'll get to in the end. It'll just happen 4 months earlier, where obviously there is time and expenditures that we feel the pressure of, and that's our business and our responsibility. So I'm just making the comment to ask the commission to consider that, and if the commission does not, is not open to removing comment number 1 and allowing this to continue, then I think the best thing for us to do would be to ask for kind of a continuance. And
yeah, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair, what we would ask is that you table it for a month so that my clients can actually consider all the comments that have and just decide whether or not to withdraw the application and come back with a full, with a separate master plan, or come back and this. And so if that's possible, we'd appreciate that.
I think that's the best solution, because you just got this information a week ago and you haven't had really time to digest it, and it takes a long time to think about all
Came in
of
at
it.
2 minutes of 6.
Yeah. So
Just ask another
That
question.
it came in, and
Isn't a
unfortunately
lot-
placed in that position.
A lot of what we're talking about between, I guess I'm still missing the part where looking at it as an individual master plan is really much different, because the things that you're talking about, the network, the road access, the traffic study, that's all going to be part of the development plan review process. So I get, is the master plan not really intended to be a general, I know that they gave us a detailed layout, but a master plan can be very conceptual in nature, and that has nothing to do really with the use. A lot of that's by right. So what we're looking at is, can they just add it to this master plan, or can they have their own master plan? But functionally, the outcome, from my view, is essentially the same, other than whether this language is in that master plan or not. So I'm struggling to see why we wouldn't want them to amend, or why we would be encouraging them to do their own master plan, because I'm not getting how that changes. Us looking at it on its own as a master plan, we can't get into the development plan review level comments at that point either. So I'm just struggling to understand the pros of doing that, I guess.
Good points. I almost wonder, well, Jim, go ahead.
I mean, I agree with you, and I can see how you might want to look at that, but I think you heard the comments from the developers themselves, and I think they don't like that first comment, and I can understand. I've been there before, actually, and I don't like when some surprise comes upon you. And that's what you got tonight, within a few weeks ago. So I think in this case here, what Lydia's saying, I agree with. Why should we go that route? But I don't think you feel comfortable with the language of that town recommendation.
I think that tabling might help us understand too, because I want to understand a little bit better your perspective on it, because it's making sense, but I'm not there.
And I agree it makes sense, but I would not be in agreement to eliminate that first comment.
Correct. I agree.
So I
agree.
I see your
That I agree.
point,
Yep.
but if
That's
the
what I'm saying
only
is
way
if
we
we can
could do
keep
it is
the
to eliminate
first
the
comment.
first point, then I'd have a problem with
They
that.
did make suggested language revisions that town staff was okay with. So if they're open to keeping that with their revisions, I guess to not delay the project if they wanted to, just wanted to throw out there that I'm not sure why we're encouraging them to delay it if the end result is going to be that they can amend the master plan with the language that they've offered.
Well, and with the language that they've offered, Richardson, would you need time to review that to make sure it makes sense, or are you comfortable with that?
No, I mean, it's a minor modification that effectively incorporates the town as the imposing entity rather than leaving it as a a directive that all shall conform, but rather the town shall require that all conform, which is it's a slight change in terminology, but I think it ultimately meets the same objective, and it doesn't diminish the legality of it. So I'd be fine with the change from a legal perspective.
And from here, I keep forgetting, from here, we're doing a recommendation, it's going to council, so you have time to vet and make sure.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Wetmore. We would have time to review that to confirm, but from looking at it right now, I understand why that change is being requested, but I also don't think it will diminish the ability of the town to enforce.
That's what you said before, Charlie, too.
But certainly we'll confirm that before it goes to council.
I think for me, it's hard, even apart from just this connects portion, by standing by this master plan amendment and providing a recommendation to town council, apart from looking at the nitty-gritty of a development plan review, from a conceptual level, I think you have to, because you're taking it as an entity as a whole, you can't just look at the one part. And the traffic study does really look at this as a single part. It's not really looking at the comprehensive nature of the rest of the development. It's not really looking at wetlands and easements and what development patterns that are being proposed here, which, like I said, even if you take out the line work, you still definitely got a use here that's inconsistent with the other planning documents that are that are approved and previously approved. So I'm struggling saying yes to something that I can tell you isn't right, even if it's just a portion of it. And I know that when it comes to development plan review, that's where it would hiccup. I don't want them saying, hey, well, Planning Commission clearly approved what looks like a commercial development by this standard, so we want to be judged by that. Then it really muddies the water of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Aren't they permitted to do commercial by right?
Not in that portion of it. Not specifically between that wetland and Bluffton Parkway. It falls in the Sandhill track, and it can't be this general commercial. It has to be.
But is this master plan doing anything with use? Is the use not by the parcel? Like, we're not granting use to the rest of the parcels in the master plan.
It looks like it's commercial when it can't be commercial, whether it develops that way or not.
Other parcel?
On another parcel, not in this.
Can you clarify, or are you trying to clarify something?
Everything's allowed uses in there. It's by the Buckwater PUD. We're in the Buckwater PUD.
You're talking about the northern.
Right, I'm talking about the portion that's under the Sandhill tract.
Of the parkway.
North of the Bluffton Parkway.
Right. What's allowed in the Sandhill tract?
It's not allowed to be the commercial. It's supposed to be residential there. It's identified as residential on the
Neighborhood
PUD.
commercial can do, that can do commercial. It's just has a size limitation on the commercial.
You're talking where Bluffton Parkway curves at the end? That's always been commercial north of there.
When it's between the wetland and 170, between the wetland going east, it's at the part of the Sandhill tract, and it's noted as residential.
Dan, could you pull up the master plan amendment?
I think that this, and I think going back to this point of if we delay this, that would give another opportunity to look at that to see if that's something that needs to be better flushed out and addressed, yes. That's my understanding as it stands currently.
Are you talking about the south side or the north?
North of the Bluffton Parkway, on the east of the, correct, where the
Area was initially approved commercial back in 07, 08.
I don't know the background on it. The point you're making is that it's not within the Commons land use tract. And the land use tract it's in is the Sandhill land use tract. And then you'd have to look at the permitted uses in the Sandhill land use tract.
You want to go to the PUD for a sec? I think it was in.
What is it that you're looking for? Oh, that's okay.
The Buckwater.
Look at, if I want to pull up the. Bear with me for 1 second, and I'll get us over to it.
Yeah, I mean, you're commercial, and you're just talking about that little area that's neighborhood commercial. That's our shown as the Sandhill Track. You're allowed to do commercial in there. It just has a limit to the size.
Okay.
I guess it really I mean, we could end up coming back with a separate master plan. I guess you just, it cost us a little time. It probably won't cost us, we quickly retool it and resubmit, but you do lose the language. Because all we were doing is a slight amendment to the first statement.
All right, can we go ahead and, since I think we're all over the place, can we kind of get a consensus of where everybody stands so we can kind of give some direction if they want to table or if we want to make a recommendation? Jim, do you have a?
I like what Lydia said. I'm torn. I mean, I am. It's because I agree, but if town staff and town council is fine with the change in the language, and they are going to be back twice. So it's not like this is the final and we're washing our hands of it. So I'm going to go with Lydia's recommendation as well.
Lydia, got the same thoughts?
Same thoughts. Would like to approve with town staff's recommendations and the amended language that the applicant provided. I think from a master planning perspective, it meets all of our criteria.
And that's what we're looking at.
Charlie, do you need any other clarification?
I'm not standing on a hill I'm willing to die on. I'm willing to go with that.
I'm on this side, yes. Okay.
I'm like Charlie, not comfortable, but I would support it.
Kathleen?
I'd like clarification on that piece of that Sandhill Tract, because I don't want to say yes to something that that we know blatantly doesn't work. I do think I don't want to miss an opportunity to stand by a change to this master plan that benefits the town. And
Can that be part of the recommendation, though, to council? Because we're not approving anything, we're just recommending to council. So part of your recommendation could incorporate looking further into that and how that impacts.
I don't know that we need to make it part of the amendment. We can direct staff to do it.
But I'm saying as a recommendation for staff to.
comment on that, to provide information to
Yes.
town council on that.
Yes. Is that something we can?
I think what my recommendation, and let me ask a question first, if I may, and then I'll get back to that one. The pink line discussion as well is, I assume that will be incorporated as one of the conditions.
Yes.
And that the applicant has said that they're capable of taking care of. But as far as the Sandhill Tract, my recommendation would be not to impose it as a condition because
But it's not it's a recommend.
So it would be a recommendation for approval with conditions, and then that would be one of the conditions that's, I think rather, it's incumbent upon staff to do that research to ensure that what they're presenting to town council with the Regional Planning Commission is consistent with the, with all the criteria, and you've challenged them to go find that.
Yep.
And to get that information, and we would hope that they would provide that information and be able to address that with council.
On the record.
I think town staff's comment 3, that opinion covers that. That you're basically saying that all the parcels, and that would be all the parcels in this master plan amendment, are subject to the town review at time of development plans.
Yeah, I mean, when a development plan comes in on the property that Kathleen is referring to, we're obviously going to look at it. But I mean, we're going to research it that way anyway to make sure.
Okay, well, with that, then let's go ahead and get a recommendation.
Did you need?
Yeah, need
Yes,
that language.
And just for the record, a copy of the document that's been handed up to Commissioner DePaul has been given to Carrie to incorporate within the minutes, so that anybody who is not able to view that document online right now
We'll be able
to once the package is posted.
Okay. Lydia.
I move to recommend to Town Council to approve the application with the conditions noted by Town Staff number 2 and number 3, as well as a revised number 1 that says a statement shall be placed on the amended master plan declaring that the town shall require all development within the Buckwalter Crossroads master plan conform to the requirements and recommendations of the Beaufort County Connects 2021 Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, and with the condition that the existing master plan pink line of roadway interconnectivity continues through the new parcel.
Do I have a second? Second. Do I have any further discussion?
I want to clarify that that pink line connect to the full access at Gibbet Road, where you can turn left and right.
The motion has already been seconded, so that's just, this is a discussion point.
Discussion. Okay, so I don't have to. Okay. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you for letting us talk back and forth and.
Thank you for
It's a little complicated, so.
Very much appreciate the dialogue.
Thank you. Item number 2, amendments to the Town of Bluffton's Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, the UDO, Article 3, application process, and Article 5, lot and building standards. Charlotte.
And Madam Chair, while we're getting ready and everybody's exiting, I just want to remind everybody that Commissioner Flynn has an appointment to pick up his wife either in Savannah or Hilton at the airport. Thank you. I hate, and I don't want to get him in trouble.
Is there anything in the language we need to say?
If he leaves, we'll just make a note of it in the minutes.
As I told Kevin.
Okay.
Fingers crossed, we'll all be leaving.
All right, Charlotte, no pressure.
Go, Charlotte.
Alrighty, thank you. We have 2 sections of the Unified Development Ordinance that are proposed to be amended. The first one is Section 317, Certificate of Appropriateness, the Highway Corridor Overlay District. Similar to what we did for the COFA Historic District, we are recommending language be inserted that an approved final development plan would be required before the Planning Commission could review the COFA Highway Corridor Overlay District plan. The purpose of that is so that we know that we have a final plan and that any changes to that plan will have already been made and corrected before we review the COFA, so we don't have some back and forth going on and taking up a lot of staff time and time for the applicant. In addition, we have Section 5.8 making some changes to the lot and building standards. And I do have the text amendments that I can pull up, but let me just briefly hit the bullet points. Some of these are housekeeping items that we need to update, some amendments that were made previously, that there was an oversight on this particular table, for instance, not removing the live-work lot type, which we eliminated previously. The light industrial district, we had discussion about this related to a development in Buck Island Road. There was concern that the large lot type may be inappropriate because of some setback and height issues. So staff is recommending that the light industrial district be removed from the various large lot types, including multifamily, mixed use, and large commercial, and that it be permitted within the medium lot types, multifamily, and mixed use. We only have 12 lots within town that are zoned light industrial. For the most part, they exist within the southern portion of Buck Island and on Goethia Road, just north of Bluffton Parkway. It's very unlikely that we'll see large development there. So this really shouldn't affect anything. Additionally, we're recommending for the large mixed-use lot type that we increase the rear yard setback from 10 feet to 30 feet. In the Plantation Park, Sheridan Park area, we have some undeveloped lots that abut residential, and this particular lot type allows up to 4 stories. That 10-foot setback is really too minimal, so the 30 feet would be more appropriate. And then finally, we're recommending for the number of stories that are permitted, that it be reduced from 5 stories to 4 stories for both the large commercial lot type and the civic lot type. If you decide to make a decision tonight on this, you can approve it as staff has recommended, make amendments, or deny the application. The criteria, most of them do not apply, 1 through 4. It does comply, the application, with the application's manual. If a decision is made tonight, this item will move forward to Town Council in July. All the amendments that we've heard this year will be packaged as one, and they will move forward July 11th. There will be a public hearing scheduled on August 8th. And with that, we are making a recommendation that the staff recommendation be approved.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Charlotte?
I'd like to make a motion.
Concerns? Okay, motion. Would you like to make a motion?
Yes. I move to approve the amendments of the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Unified Development Ordinance, as recommended by town staff.
Second.
Do I have any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion about anything, anyone? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Anybody want to discuss that further?
Nope.
All in favor? Aye. Hey.